My cousin said I was jealous of her perfect marriage, so I pulled out the screenshots of what her husband was doing on business trips, and nobody called me jealous again. I'm 31F. My cousin Claire is 33F. We grew up like sisters, same grandparents, same holidays, same stupid childhood nicknames. Lately, everyone calls her life perfect. 2 kids, an immaculate house, a husband with a corner office, social media that looks like a lifestyle ad. I'll be honest. There were times I wanted that, but I never let it become the thing that defined me. We texted, we compared recipes, we argued about which aunt's stuffing was superior. That's why what happened feels like a betrayal inside 2 family trees. Claire's marriage had been the thing people admired for years. Mark works in tech, travels a lot for client work and conferences, and he's naturally charming. Claire's Instagram is pristine, Claire photos, matching family pajamas, dinners that look like they came from glossy magazines. She got used to compliments and the little performance of being perfect. A few months back, she started giving me this line often. At family dinners or in group texts, she'd say, "Sweet as pie, you've got to let go of bitterness and stop being jealous of other people's lives." She wasn't subtle. Once, when I groused about my own relationship failing, she said in front of Mom, "You know, some of us actually work at keeping our marriages intact instead of cataloging every slight." It stung. I wasn't cataloging slights. I was living my life, but her barbs got louder and sneakier. The worst part was how quickly others started to parrot it. "Claire has it all, you should be happy for her." That primed the room against me if I ever said anything. Around the same time, I started noticing small things about Mark's travel that didn't add up. He'd mark a week as client site on Facebook, but check-ins and LinkedIn activity showed him in cities he hadn't mentioned. Claire would tell me, "He's exhausted. The travel schedule is brutal." And when I'd say, "He seems to be in a lot of places," she'd smile and say I was imagining drama. The pattern of me asking and her shutting it down got old. A month ago, a mutual friend, I'll call her Jen, sent me a message meant for someone else. She'd been in a group chat with a woman I didn't know, call her Sophie, and something got forwarded into my DMs by mistake. A single screenshot from Sophie's phone. It was a text thread between Sophie and a number saved as Mark, and it said, in a not at all casual tone, "Tonight at the Hilton? The corridor near the 8th floor stairs worked last time." Winky face. Below that was a timestamp and a tiny blue bubble that read, "Booked the room. We'll be quiet." The screenshot had the right-hand side of the thread, his replies, and they were not subtle. I stared at the message for a long time. My first thought, this is someone else's drama. My second thought, it lines up with dates I'd noticed. I messaged Jen back. "Who is this Sophie?" She replied, "No idea. Sophie is a stranger. I only know the girls were gossiping about a guy at Mark's conference last month." UGH wrong thread. She apologized and deleted it. I should have left it there. I didn't. I asked around quietly. A bridesmaid who'd been at a work conference with Mark had seen him leave a hotel with a woman. Someone else said they'd seen him register a room under a different name once. Little shards fit together into a pattern that looked a lot like cheating disguised as business travel. I didn't feel like I had enough to confront Claire. I wanted proof that couldn't be gaslit away as rumor. So I started collecting what, legally and discreetly, I could. The screenshot Jen sent, some public check-ins that showed Mark in weird cities on odd nights, a receipt a mutual acquaintance accidentally posted, a photo of a hotel keycard, and a cocktail with the caption, "Conference Magic." Mark's conference was in town that night. None of it was hacking. It came to me through Ms. Sen's, public posts, or other people's loose tongues. When you're trying to decide whether to trust your gut or your memory, those small things feel enormous. I printed a few pieces and made a timeline on my kitchen table, dates, locations, and the corresponding Instagram posts where Claire had said, "Oh, he was just in the office late." It looked ugly in print. I should say this. I tried to go the adult route at first. I asked Claire flat, "Has Mark been unfaithful?" She scoffed. "Are you serious? Where is this coming from?" She played the wounded, then the indignant. "I don't know why you've become this person who looks for dirt. You need help." She said jealousy in such a way that my chest tightened. She stared at me like I'd dirted our family's linen. At the next family dinner, she marched in with that same smile and told anyone who would listen that I was souring the air with baseless accusations. That evening, she cornered me in the kitchen. "If you keep insinuating things about my husband, I will cut you off. My marriage is not your project." She used the cut-off line like a threat and like a promise. And just to be clear, I love Claire. I grew up with her, but she was doubling down on a very loud, very public story. Me, jealous and bitter. Her, the wronged wife. So I decided to stop playing nice in private and start being precise in public. I wanted to avoid theatrics. She'd already called me dramatic, but I also wanted to put the facts where the performative narrative could no longer hide them. Her friends were going to keep telling the story she wanted, unless the room was shown the alternative. Claire and Mark had a big barbecue planned at their house. Neighbors, family, colleagues. Everyone who was part of their perfect life would be there. It was the perfect set piece to expose something. If I did it right, the microphones wouldn't be needed. The people she'd been inviting to cheer for her marriage would read the facts and change their tune. I told 2 people, my sister, who's solid, and one cousin who I trusted to help without turning it into gossip. They both said, "Are you sure?" I told them I was. They agreed to be there and to back me up if things went sideways. Update: the day of the barbecue. I brought a folder and a small thumb drive. I kept it in my coat, hands sweating in pockets, trying not to hyperventilate. The yard was so gleaming and cheerful. Kids running, a grill fired up, Claire in a sundress smiling like everything was a postcard. Mark was the charming host, working a crowd. At first I wandered, said hi, kept my voice light. People chatted about work, weather, holiday plans. Claire hugged me and said, "So glad you could come." Her voice had a sweetness that felt brittle. When the timing felt right, folks digesting and cooling off after food, I asked for a moment. My cousin's face went white for a second, then she gave me a small, tight nod. I stood on a patio step and said, "I have something I need to show everyone. It won't take long." The murmurs quieted. People turned toward me. Claire's smile flickered into a look I can only call wariness. I pulled out the thumb drive and asked the host to hook my phone to the big outdoor TV. I wasn't shouting. I wasn't trying to be dramatic. I wanted people to see what I'd seen: dates, messages, receipts. On the screen, the first slide was a screenshot, the one Jen had missent, with the Hilton corridor, 8th floor, line bold and obvious. The next slide was a receipt from a hotel bar with Mark's credit card initials on it from a date. Claire had said he was in town for a seminar, but had posted a family photo. Then I scrolled through a few more messages from the same number, some that mentioned next week, same time, and another that read, "Can't wait for Tuesday, client dinner covers us." You could hear a pin drop. People glanced at Claire like they were seeing her in a new light. Mark's jaw tightened. He opened his mouth to say something, the reflex to deny, but the receipts were time-stamped and the messages were unambiguous. Claire's first move was classic. She went red, then furious. "Emma, what are you doing? You can't just air private messages at my house." Her voice quivered, part shock, part fake moral outrage. Then her mask cracked. "Where did you get those?" I said calmly. "They were sent to me by mistake. They match dates you called club events on social media." Her friends looked uncomfortable. Her sister, the one who'd always spoken up for Claire, dropped her plate and stared. A guy who works with Mark said quietly, "Is that from the conference last month?" The chatter shifted from, "How dare you," to, "Ha." Mark tried to laugh it off. "This is a misunderstanding." He said the woman was a client, that the messages were taken out of context. I asked one simple question in front of everyone. "Did you stay in a hotel with her on these dates?" His answer was a non-answer, and that's when something else happened. Sophie, the woman in the screenshots, was at the barbecue. It wasn't planned. She'd been invited by a mutual colleague and had shown up early. She was standing near the pool when a neighbor recognized her and nudged her. "Hey, weren't you the woman who was at the conference last month?" Sophie went pale. Then she did the thing that ends denials. She opened her phone and scrolled. She'd kept one of the threads, apparently for reasons I won't pretend to understand. She held her phone up and said flat, "If anyone wants receipts, I have them." She showed a thread where Mark clearly arranged meetups and then messaged under different hours saying, "Just at the hotel, doors open." People are complicated and dumb in different measures. Sophie wasn't interested in being polite that day. Silence roared. "Claire's laughable. You're being dramatic." Routine evaporated. My cousin who had told me to be careful came over and muttered, "I hate this for all of you," and then looked at Mark with something like disgust. Mark finally went pale and said, "This isn't for public consumption." Someone, an aunt, a blunt woman who tells the truth like it's a grocery list, said, "Then maybe you should have thought about that before you were sneaking around." No one argued with her. The moral calculus in the yard shifted fast. People who'd been ready to protect the story were now reading the timeline and muttering. Claire shrank in the middle of it like the center of a flare. She ran to Mark and clung to him for a second. Then she turned and screamed at me. "You ruined everything. You're a jealous liar." She pushed past, knocking over a lawn chair on her way back into the house. I heard the scrape, and then the slam of a door. No one called me jealous anymore. The rhythms changed. People who'd been judges 2 minutes before were now witnesses to Mark's texts. Update, 3 days later. The fallout was predictably messy. Claire posted an enraged version online, that I had publicly humiliated her and that Mark was a victim of a smear. For a few hours, the bubble of her curated life burst into supporters who hadn't been at the barbecue. Then more friends who had been there started posting, quietly and with pictures, lines like, "If you're going to have a perfect life, don't cheat behind it." The internet predictably divides. Mark tried to explain to his parents. They looked like people who'd been hit by a bus and then told to smile. His phone is now more or less useless. His work called him into meetings and politely said they'd be in touch. Sophie quietly left town. She sent me a message later thanking me for not letting him keep hiding. It felt like a weird, half-cleared battlefield. Claire texted me nonstop in the 2 days after. Rage, pleading, promises. She alternated between blows where she called me a monster and the small, cowardly apology messages that say everything and mean nothing. "I'm sorry you feel that way." I didn't respond to any of it. I focused on my family. My sister brought over casseroles and sat with my kids and read them where we'd be during the week. The kids' unaffectedness was the most healing thing available. They still wanted pancakes, still wanted me to make forts. Those small demands are what kept me from being consumed. Final update, 6 weeks later. Claire and Mark separated. He moved into a small rental. She's staying with the kids at her mother's in the short term. Family gatherings are weird and small now. Some people blocked me for being too harsh, but a lot of the ones I cared about saw the timeline and sat with me in quiet. My cousin who urged me to show the evidence hugged me like someone who'd learned how to decide quickly. I'm not celebrating anyone's pain. It's ugly and messy and leaves bruises where nothing used to be. But I don't regret pulling out the screenshots. Claire had a choice. Defend the man who cheated or listen. She chose defense first, apologies later. When someone uses your family stories to gaslight you into being the bad sibling, you get tired of playing nice for the sake of appearances. I'm done pretending that perfect means flawless. Perfection is a photograph, and photographs lie. I'd rather live messy and honest with people who show up than stand in someone else's glossy picture while they pretend. That's the end.